Good afternoon, everyone. This is Monday, January the 31st. I just came back from an appointment in Houston, and it's kind of gloomy and rainy and ugly here. I hope the weather you have is better than that, but kind of is what it is this time of year. It's good to have a chance to visit with all of you guys again. There are three things I want to talk about very quickly just to make you aware of, one of which is on a personal note. Sequoia Boswell, that many of you have talked to on a regular basis, lost her only son about a week or so ago. He had bile duct cancer, and it was something that was quite sudden. He began having issues, and in short order, he had passed away. So his service was last week. So keep Sequoia in your thoughts and prayers. And she, I think, is in the process of coming back to work. She's been off 3 or 4 weeks, but she's spending too much time at home. So she's looking forward to coming back, and we're certainly looking forward to her coming back and being with us. With regard to transition, we are probably 90+% done with the transition now. So we had 860 households, and each client got probably 7 to 8 accounts. So you can kind of do the math. Moved somewhere north of 6,000 accounts. The biggest challenge we've had by far, and still we're having, is with insurance companies that are domiciled up in the Northeast or on the West Coast, and almost nobody works from home. And what used to take a week for your annuities and things of that sort to get transitioned, your life insurance, is now taking a month or 6 weeks, and that's been kind of painful to us. But there's not a whole lot we can do. When you hear the phrase supply chain disruption, that's another version of supply chain disruption. People are not working from home. In many cases, states have COVID lockdowns and all kinds of things. Certainly in New York and Boston, where most of the insurance companies have their home office. San Francisco and Los Angeles would be two other key places. So we are moving through with that. If you have not yet gotten a login to Black Diamond, that's something that Tess or Kim or Shelby or Jeremy can get for you. That way you can log on to Black Diamond and just recognize that some of your annuity things and life insurance things are not yet showing up, and a few other things. If you have an account from CLS, we're still struggling to figure out how to make that work, but it's all in the works, and it will eventually be done, and we will all be glad for that. The last thing I want to talk about for just a moment is what's going on with the stock markets and what's going on with the economy in general. So we have not had inflation like we're seeing now for 40 years, literally going all the way back to the Jimmy Carter administration. As a general rule, inflation is way too much money chasing too few goods. The government likes to say, because it's to their advantage, that the supply chain disruption is the reason why there's inflation. That really isn't true at all. Supply chain disruption is much more a function of people getting paid for long periods of time to stay at home. And so we had one stimulus check after another, and basically there's been about $6 trillion in borrowed money that got dumped into our economy in the last 2 years, and about half of that in the last 10 to 12 months. So I was at a seminar most of the day on Friday up in the Woodlands, north of Houston, and the conversation is we still have 120 to 140 ships docked off Long Beach and LA harbors. They are now, because of the problems in California, and this has to do with a truck older than 3 years old is not allowed in the state, and you have to have a COVID vaccine, and you have to have your card, or you can't drive a truck in, or you can't work in the docks. So they're now bringing ships all the way into Houston and Savannah, Georgia, and a number of other places. Jerome Powell said the latter part of last week, the Treasury Secretary, Fed Chairman I should say, that the supply chain problem's not getting better anytime soon. That's only a small part of the problem. The problem is a whole lot of money got dumped into the economy, and it's causing inflation. And so we were year over year 6% a month ago. We're now year-over-year numbers north of 7% inflation. Well, that is a tax on everybody. So one of the things you see happen in a time like this is interest rates are going to go up. That's the only way really the Federal Reserve has to fix inflation, is they slow down demand. And the way they slow down demand is by jacking up interest rates. And so instead of paying 3% to borrow a house, buy a house, you're going to pay 4% or 5 or 6 or 7. If you're going to buy a car, instead of paying 1.9, you're going to pay 6%. So that's the Federal Reserve's really the only bullet they have in their gun. That is causing what we would call a sector rotation. And that is fund companies are getting out of technology stocks that really grew significantly. And these are companies that either borrow a lot of money because they are, they're growing so fast, or if their stock value is going up 20, 30% a year like Amazon has, and Facebook and Google and Netflix, they would rather borrow money at 3 to 4% than they would sell their own company stock. So you're seeing a sell-off in some of that, and you'll see things that pay high dividends, and that would be oil and gas stocks, that would be utility stocks, that would be bank stocks that pay a 3, 4, 5% dividend. We, on the other hand, are still big fans of the technology stocks, and we had a very nice bounce on Friday and a pretty sizable bounce today. So money's coming back into them. They are clearly going to be the growth vehicles going forward. So your portfolios probably saw something like a 7, 8, maybe as much as a 9% drop. That's pretty common. About once a year, we expect to see something like a 10% sell-off, and it virtually always involves one of two things. The analysts feel like companies have gotten ahead of their earnings, or there is a sector rotation, rotating out of one sector into another. So this is a short-term phenomenon. We basically take a look at when things bottom, and they likely bottomed on Thursday. They will go up a little bit. We will see a second and maybe even a third retest of the bottom. And when that happens, we are ready to start putting money to work. Many of you, whether you know it or not, have short-term bond funds, which are basically a cash replacement. That's when we see something drop 10 to 15% in value, it's when we pull money out of those short-term investments and go into some of our favorite stocks. You'll be seeing some of that coming up pretty quickly. And so I say to people all the time, this is a stock market. And so when people get nervous and say, get me out, there has to be a buyer for every seller. Well, we are the buyers. That's kind of what we do when the market sells off. So it is what allows you to have maybe a 10 or a 15% return is we buy right when you use the old phrase, there's blood in the streets. So you will see that happening coming up pretty quickly. I'm a little bit slowed in doing my reviews in the Hill Country as well as in East Texas. We have been to East Texas once already, but we have not been to Tyler for a while. We will do that pretty quickly. And so the slowdown in all of our transition has kind of pushed all of that back a little bit.